So in our province today, what do we have? We're spending now $1 billion more a year than we were 4 years ago. And I'd ask each and every one of you, what have you seen for that $1 billion more? And that $1 billion more in government spending is related to spending that's created by tax dollars. Now, there's no secret that government spending has never been seen as the best, most efficient way to utilize dollars. Now, I know there was some very strategic advice that came federally back a month or so ago that the answer to our economic problems was spend more. And I know that everyone in this room certainly would not be in that camp. The spending more was going to get a better result. So how do we change that? I've been criticized a lot for my experience. You know, I grew up in this province. I grew up went to school in Canterbury High. I was born in Woodstock. I went to university here at UNB, graduated in mechanical engineering. My wife graduated with a teacher's degree. We lived in St. John. So, worked for a New Brunswick company, married my high school sweetheart. We have 4 daughters, and 4 of those daughters, 1 is here in the province, and the other 3 are outside. 1 in Bangkok, 2 in Ontario currently, and 1 in New Brunswick. And how many people have that same situation? How many people are in that same state? So I've been criticized for having a career in the province, having a career that I'm proud of and would like to see more people have a career in New Brunswick. I've been criticized for the fact that, you know, I actually look at getting value for money. I want to analyze every decision. I want policies based on facts. And you know, many times when I listen to whether it be an ad on me personally, you know, you do get so you just kind of, it washes off after a while. But I encourage people to look at it in detail and understand the facts. Because, you know, it's like an example. Here would be an example how this could be taken. Let's say I had a dog that could walk on water. And whoever is writing the ads on me would come to investigate this dog. And so they come and they look at the dog and they see it run across the lake and run back and say, wow. And the next day in the headline, it would be, Higgs's dog can't swim. Less than 8% of the time has there been anyone in government, in the Premier's office, that had any remote affiliation to business. Now people will say, well, government's not a business. And you know what, I beg to disagree. Government is not a business for profit. But any operation that spends taxpayers' dollars, it's critical to get value for those dollars being spent. And so how do we get better value for each and every dollar? Investing money, as the phrase goes, is only worth something if when you invest, you actually get results for that. Results that you can feel and see and hear. So here we are, record investments we often hear. Last place in economic growth. Spending at 3 times the current rate. The economic growth in the province has gone down steadily. We're last in the country. Health wait times. We are twice the national average. We're the longest wait times in the country when referred from a general practitioner to a specialist, in every category. In education, we're 8th, despite spending. We've gone from $500 million to $1.2 billion, and enrollment's gone down 17%, and we're 8th in the country. So why do we think that throwing money is going to solve the problem? In education, what has been one of the single biggest barriers to success? I claim this in every category. One of the single biggest barriers of success in our province would be politics and the political decisions outweighing the provincial decisions and people decisions. In education, the MBTA president told me that in the last 35 years, there have been 37 major curriculum changes in the Anglophone system. Now you imagine being a teacher in that world and trying to manage. Pretty soon, and like many other things, many other disciplines, you just throw your hands up. So when I talk about government being a business, or being able to act like a business, it's getting value for dollars. And it's asking the professionals in the system, every one of them, that work in health, that work in education, that work in social services, to help us get better. I never had success in my life without a team working together. So why can't we come together as a team to fix New Brunswick? We cannot do that without better behavior politically, without a higher level of performance. And I'm excited about the quality of candidates that are running for that very reason. Because I'm tired of being in last place. We even got the worst road in Atlantic Canada. So how do we change the tune? And when do we have job announcements that aren't related to a government policy or government money? When is the last time You've heard a job announcement that did not have government dollars attached to it. And what is the problem? Why can't we make New Brunswick a place that people want to invest in? Because we have a better tax structure. We have better productivity and a working environment. We have people engaged in moving our province forward. We have somebody that holds hands of people that want to invest so that you take them right through every department. You don't get a message, not my department. I had a Korean gentleman who came to my office a few months ago, and he invested this, I think it was $75,000 to come and set up in the province. So he had a 2-year timeline in which to start his business and get it up and running. So in about a year and a half, he got approval for his project. In the meantime, he had taken an MBCC course, was working at a car dealership as a mechanic. He got his approval in the, let's say it was in the spring and in June. His timeline ran out the end of September. Through the months of July and August, he bought his business, he got registered, he hired employees, he bought a house, he moved into the community formally, didn't get his application in to get his refund back. And guess what he got in October? You no longer qualify for your $75,000. Now, how did he feel when every requirement he made but to apply to get his money back? How many people did he tell, don't invest in New Brunswick? They won't support you. They'll take your money. When he came to the office, he was devastated. He said, I can't afford to lose $75,000. We called, he showed me the letter. We called the very individual who had sent the letter to him, and through the department, and then the individual called back, and he said, oh, no, if he puts the application in, well, it'll be good. Well, I said, I'm reading a letter here from you that says he's disqualified. Well, I know, but if he gets it in, we'll deal with it. Why would you send the letter? Why wouldn't you call him? Where is the ownership to help people want to be part of a solution for New Brunswick? In the flood situation we had in Darling's Island, a case where 4 kilometers sitting in the Newidgewok Fire Hall were 3 DNR officials. I went in, I said, what are you doing here? Why aren't you down there helping people get to their homes? That's not an emergency. We're not allowed. But unless we hear a 911 call, we aren't allowed to go. So how do people feel about paying taxes when the very people who want to help us are told, no, you can't help them? How many other stories do we have of people that don't make decisions that are common sense? So how do we start a change in philosophy? A change where we don't have a continuation of just throwing more tax dollars, but a situation where we see more private sector investment. Over 90% of the investment in the province right now is private sector money, is public sector money. Over 90%. We need to focus back on rural New Brunswick. You know, we continue to bypass. I'm done bypassing rural New Brunswick. I want to see our businesses flourish in little businesses everywhere as much as possible. But moving people around through our province and bypassing our communities is not going to solve that. I want to develop in areas that make sense. I announced a few weeks ago that we were open to look at the shale gas development in areas and regions that wanted it. Sussex is one such region. Albert County is an area. Let's look at that. Within 24 hours, Corridor announced they'd be back. $70 million investment in the province. That was in 24 hours. When I spoke about Energy East, I spoke to Scott Moe, and I asked him about, there were 2 things actually. One was about the carbon tax. Like, we want to be an intervener, working with him to fight the carbon tax. We want a carbon plan to meet our emissions. We don't need more tax. Remember how it started out? It started out as a revenue neutral. Then it went to, oh, it's going to be for environmental projects. And now it's general revenue. Well, we know what that is, and it was deferred for 1 year. How convenient to be deferred for 1 year through the election period. And then January 1st, if nothing changes with the current government, on January 1st, the carbon tax will be implemented. We will fight that every step of the way because we don't need more taxes. We need results for the money we pay already. Municipal tax reform. We've talked about it. We need communities to have more ability, have more control over their funding model, and less control centrally from government. I see the potential because we need everybody in the game. And when we talk about people graduating, when I mentioned the education system and our academic scores, I also found, something that's unique for New Brunswick is that we don't take advantage of the fact that we are a bilingual province. I spent my career in southern New Brunswick. I traveled from St. John to the Woodstock area and out in the East Grand Lake area and have a camp there. My mother's still living there, and I visit there as often as I can. So I never really experienced much about the northern part of the province until I got into politics. And I started traveling around for the last 8 years. And one of the things that really strikes me is when I meet and I go into communities and they're speaking both languages back and forth, and it's great to see. When you see that, people are talking about everyday issues. And what do we teach? We try to make it difficult. So they're speaking a conversational communication back and forth, and we're teaching an academic program in the school system. Math, sciences, calculus, Pythagorean's theorem. What kind of fun is that? My kids took the French immersion program in late immersion, and it wasn't fun for them. And the last time it was in grade 1, less than 10% made it to the end, the last time. And what did we do? We moved it back to grade 1. What kind of success is that? We need to change the dial, and you know how we do it? We ask teachers what works. And in the meantime, when we're graduating less than 10% of our kids that are bilingual in the Anglophone system, we need to rethink our hiring practice. We need to understand, it's not good enough to have our ambulances parked alongside the road because we can't find the language requirements. I mean, think about that for a minute. How many people would say, well, park the ambulance? Instead of, well, we don't care. If you've got qualified people, get them in it. So why don't we start a policy where we hire for skill and we train for language? Our aging care model, we're building 10 new nursing homes. And how many people want to go to a nursing home? I always ask that question, and I don't get many people raising their hand. The money we're spending on bricks and mortar, I want to cut ribbons on results. I want to cut ribbons when more people are able to stay in their homes. When we build a healthcare career from home care services, we allow our people moving into that profession to actually train, to get better salaries, better rates, so it is a career. And they can move anywhere through a healthcare profession. It is one of the single biggest challenges we have demographically in this province. And we are ignoring it by thinking that we can just build more nursing homes. There's always going to be a room for a certain number of nursing homes. There's no question about that. But we're only increasing the total capability by about 40 to 45 a year. And 2 years ago, the requirement was going to be 6,000 more by the end of 2030, I think the time was. And we're doing it about 40 a year. 36,000 people we have on social assistance. 30% of them are under the age of 18. So next year, 36,000. The year after that, 35 or 34 or 30. We get on a program, and if people aren't getting results, we change the program. But we change it to get results. We don't say to people, people often say, oh, well, where are you going to cut? It's not about cutting. It's about getting value for every dime that's spent. And if you're spending money and you're not getting any value, well, we'll talk. Because that money can be used to get results. And that is the goal, to get results in everywhere we go. I am focused on us having a better province. I've seen the potential. I'm not here for the goodness of my health. I'm here to work with people and teams to get a better province.
The poverty reduction initiatives, and a lot of those were some pretty good ideas there, but then it seems to have fallen off the radar. Can you talk about what you plan to do about poverty reduction?
So my goal is to take the pot, look at it, and understand what each group's goal is. Clearly, what's your goal? And the goal's got to be, and the social assistance is, maybe you say if you got 18% that are less than, or 30% that are less than 18 years old, you basically say, well, those are the focus groups. There's where we head. Because if someone's been in it for a long time, you're probably going to have trouble making a dent there. But target the root cause and how do you get people off it, and focus on the teams that are showing a reduction. By a reduction, I mean an improvement in getting people out into the workforce.
Since they all went into effect, there have been well over 1,000 studies that pretty much validate all the fears that people had about fracking in areas such as water pollution, air pollution, and especially public health, with a lot of problems, particularly amongst infants and children. So. In the light of all that, I wondered what evidence that would be presented and what process you would go through to lift the moratorium and convince New Brunswickers that these risks that all these other places have validated no longer exist.
You know, we can continue here to say no to just about everything, or we can find a way to move forward in a sustainable and a meaningful way. Because saying no to private sector investment and saying no to anything but more tax dollars is not going to sustain our province. So I'm not going to find reasons to say no. I'm going to find sustainable and effective ways to do what's right in environmentally safe and environmentally sound and a practical way forward. But I won't, and in communities, that's why I'm not saying province-wide. We're not talking about that. We're talking about regions, that we review the region, we review the situation in that region, we review with the councils and municipalities, and we say, okay, what makes sense?
I really would like you to look at some of the research that I've read. I'm a former teacher, so I read a lot. I would really appreciate you reading that, and I would like to know how your policy on shale gas, how does it fit into anyone's plans to fight climate change?
It's a managed process, and I'll look at every fact, but I encourage you to do the same, because it's not one-sided for me or you. And if we look at all the facts and we mitigate our risks. We mitigate our and make it anything we move forward on as sustainable and as environmentally friendly as we possibly can. But life, you know, life is a situation of making decisions. We all have to make decisions, and for me, they're balanced decisions. No wholesale issue, a balanced approach. In the Energy East program that is being ignored here, $4.5 billion bought on private. I mean, I think that's atrocious for a company and the government to buy out the pipeline of Kinder Morgan. I would never ask them to do that for TransCanada either. All they needed to do with TransCanada, who'd already spent $800 million, was actually look at the application. And what was that going to do? It was going to force government to make a decision, but they never accepted the application, so after 5 years, TransCanada never even knew when a decision would be made. Now, how does that encourage private sector investment?
In our hospitals, 25% of hospital beds are being occupied by seniors who don't need to be in hospital, but actually need to be in nursing homes. In fact, 40% of that 25% of our seniors in our hospital beds are seniors living with dementia. People with dementia obviously can't be at home. You also made mention of access to specialty care in our province, and certainly not only in the last 4 years, but the last 8, 12, and 16 years, we have placed near the bottom in terms of wait time for specialty care. So that's not a 4-year problem or even an 8-year problem. What we believe needs to be done is to fill every vacancy that we have for specialists in our province. Further, we need family doctors to work together in teams. So we have launched a program with the current government, and we would hope that if you take power, that you would support and continue that program.
And absolutely, a continuation of any program that is working is first and foremost for me, because part of the issue of any government has been throwing out what the last one did and starting new. So for me, any activity in arriving as a new premier would be to sit down with the department and basically say, what's been accomplished in the last 4 years? What are your targeted areas of performance? Where do you see an opportunity for us to focus in order to continually improve that? Throwing more resources at it may be needed in some areas, but may not be needed in other areas. Throwing money and say, oh, well, our solution is just throw more money. I don't believe that. I believe we're taxed out. I believe we're spending enough money per capita in this province to get better services. So how many situations do we have where they can't get out of the hospital because they're in a nursing home with no other place to go but stay in the nursing home, when they could have a lifestyle in our own facility that provide the services provided through a home care professional that can actually visit as needed. And in the case of doctors and looking at, well, let's look at billing numbers. Let's understand, why are we the only province in the country without billing, with billing numbers? Why do we have that? And what restrictions does that put on us? So let's get a serious discussion on that, because I want to understand anywhere, why are we different? Are we different in a good way? Or are we different because we just won't change?
A challenge that we faced in the last couple of years are the increased WorkSafe costs. We're wondering how you think that a solution can be found to 33% increase 1 year, nearly 20% last year, and projecting another big increase this year. Where do you see a solution in that?
Well, it seems like the whole WorkSafe process is out of control. This situation and 30% increases has only happened in the last 2-3 years. So what has changed? I know that about 93% of all the claims are being approved, and we're retroactively approving past claims that were not approved. So what is different? What has caused that, and how are we unique? I understand across the country that it's on average, there's usually about 80% or 85% of claims that are approved. So why has ours all of a sudden jumped to 10% increase, which has then gone to download onto the businesses?
I have kind of a two-part question. The first one is one program that we have seen that does improve the access to post-secondary education and that is working is programs like the free tuition program and tuition relief for the middle class. So the first part of my question is what are your party's policies and plans with regards to those types of programs? And the second part of my question is about you commented on youth leaving the province and that type of situation. So I was just wondering any plans you have for youth employment.
I believe that every student in this province should have access to money to go to university or post-secondary education of any kind. I believe they should have the right to go to whichever one they choose that's accredited university. I believe that we need to know, is it working? And we need to know who is going today that could not have gone before because they didn't have the money to do so. In relation to job employment, you know, I could stand up here and promise 10,000 new jobs. And some of you may walk away and say, that's great, 10,000 new jobs. Oh, how are you going to do that? Well, many times people don't even ask. They just say 10,000 new jobs. And how many new jobs announcements have we heard coming soon? Coming by 2020? Coming by the next 10 years? We'll have them, oh, this is a 10-year program. It'll going to be starting after the election, 2020, 2018, the fall of, or 2019. Coincidentally, after the election, that all these things are going to happen. So I believe that, you know, things like the one-job pledge, things like that are giving tax rebates for people hiring, I think they're good programs. And I think we need to encourage ways for people to find a way to hire somebody else. And you don't do that by saying, well, there's election coming up, so I'm going to raise minimum wage. You develop a formula for minimum wage so businesses know when the increase is coming. The focus is going to be removing the barriers for private sector to invest once again in our province.
New Brunswick is the only province in the country that actually charges double when anybody invests in a second property, like an apartment building or a second residence or anything like that. I'm just wondering if what you would do differently than what's currently on the policy.
My goal, and we'd started that. In 2012, we had a 4-year program that went from 12 to 16, and that continued. And it was basically to reduce it. And it went from a 2 times down to a 1.77. And the goal would be to continue it. It isn't something you can do overnight because it's a big revenue issue for the province. But as you manage the expenses, as you look at opportunities to reduce tax, it's kind of an opportunity for people to invest more as you start to reduce their cost of doing business. So if we're going to continue to tax people that work, we're going to continue to lay taxes on people that work 60, 70 hours a week to run their business, our province will not survive. And when you look at the current forestry plan, when you look at that and you say, well, why are we paying a duty for our forest products going into the U.S.? If our practices are not suitable, if our practices are not compatible with a fair market condition, then we need to change our practices because paying duties to go into the U.S. is not the answer. That money needs to stay in New Brunswick. Let's not have a political distribution model. Let's have an economic distribution model. I am tired of people saying, I drove through New Brunswick once on my way to Nova Scotia or PEI. Well, I don't want to put roadblocks up, but we got to get them off the highways.